The prisoner space was quiet, cold, and endless. Only the deep hum of the human warship Vigilant Storm broke the silence. It floated above a dead planet in Sector 9, a place long abandoned, forgotten by time. Captain Elias Rains stood on the Yai bridge watching the black void through the thick glass window. He was a serious man, battle-worn and tired. His ship had just finished a long mission and the crew was ready to rest. But then, the scanner beeped. "Commander," said Ensign Juno, pointing at the screen. "Unidentified object, small. It's an escape pod." Rains raised an eyebrow. "Out here?" "Yes, sir." "Drifting near the planet's orbit. No signal, no life signs, but there's power. Weak, but there." Rains gave a nod. "Bring it aboard, carefully." Few minutes later, the pod was pulled into the cargo bay. Soldiers in armor surrounded it, guns ready. The pod opened with a soft hiss. Cold steam rolled out. And then she appeared. A woman. Tall, thin, and injured. Her skin was pale, almost silver. Parts of her arms and neck were covered with smooth metal. Her eyes glowed faintly blue. She stumbled forward and collapsed. The crew rushed in, aiming weapons. But she raised her hand weakly. "Please, and don't shoot," she said, her voice shaking but clear. "I'm not your enemy." Rains arrived, stepping through the soldiers. He stared at her with cold, careful eyes. "You speak English?" She nodded. "Yes, I learned long ago." Rains narrowed his eyes. "What are you?" The woman looked up slowly. Her eyes were tired, but something dangerous hid behind them. "I was a queen. Now, I'm just a prisoner." They brought her to the medical bay. Machines scanned her body. Human, mostly. But there were implants, strange tech no one recognized. Her bones were reinforced. Her brain had links, connections to something more. Dr. Alira shook her head. "She's advanced. Part machine, but organic. Never seen anything like this." Rain stood at the doorway, arms crossed. He didn't trust her. Not yet. After hours, she opened her eyes again. "What's your name?" he asked. She smiled. Faintly. "Names are lies, but if you must call me something, call me Lyris." Rain sat beside her, watching every move. "How did you end up alone in that pod?" Lyris looked away. "I ran." "From what?" Her voice dropped to a whisper. "From death. From something worse than death." Rains leaned in slightly. "Explain." She looked into his eyes, and for a moment the room felt colder. "I ruled an empire," she said slowly. "Not by choice, but by design, built by those who mix flesh with steel. I was their queen, their voice, their blade. But I broke their laws. I tried to save what they wanted to destroy. So they hunted me. And I ran." Rain stayed quiet. Lyris continued, her voice shaking. "They are coming. They don't forgive. They don't stop. And now, they will come for me. And you." The captain stood up. "Why should I believe you?" Lyris looked at him, and her eyes seemed to glow brighter. "Because if you don't, everyone on this ship will die." The lights flickered. A soft hum passed through the ship like a breath from something watching. "What was that?" asked Juno over the intercom. Rains turned sharply. "Status report." "Just a signal. Weak. Short range." It disappeared. Rains looked back. "At Lyris they found me," she whispered. "Or at least they're looking. You have little time." Rains stepped back, unsure. Part of him wanted to throw her back into the void, but another part was curious. She wasn't lying. He could feel it. Her fear was real. "So what do you want from us?" he asked. Lyris sat up slowly, pain flashing on her face. "Spare me, protect me, and in return, I'll give you something." "What?" She paused. Her voice became soft, almost gentle. "An empire, one that bends to your will, of flesh and steel." The room went silent. Only the hum of the engines remained. Rains didn't speak. He turned, walking out of the room, his face unreadable. Lyris lay back down, staring at the ceiling, a faint smile on her lips. Outside, in the cold space beyond, something stirred. Something coming. Something not human. The betrayal of flesh deep inside the warship Vigilant Storm, Lyris lay alone in a locked room. Bright lights above her hummed, but they brought no warmth. The cold steel walls felt too familiar, just like the place she once escaped from. Outside, guards stood watch, but none dared speak to her. They had seen her eyes. Eyes that didn't look away. Eyes that had seen war, pain, and something darker. In the control room, Captain Rains stared at a glowing screen. A faint signal had appeared again, barely readable. A pattern. Like a voice trying to speak through static. She said, "They're coming," Juno whispered. What if it's true? Rains didn't answer. He couldn't stop thinking about her words. An empire of flesh and steel. Was she a warning or a weapon? 3 hours passed. Then Lyris asked to speak to Rains. Alone. He agreed, but made sure every word was recorded. He entered the room slowly. She stood by the window, looking at the stars. "Do you believe in monsters, Captain?" she asked. Rains crossed his arms. "I've killed enough of them." She turned, eyes calm. "I was one." He said nothing. She walked slowly to a metal bench and sat. "Let me tell you what I was, what they made me. My body was once human, born on a mining colony, nothing special. But I was taken, chosen by a machine priest. They scanned my blood, my brain, said I had the spark." "The spark?" Rains asked. "Connection. Not all humans have it, but some can speak to the code, feel it, bend it. They called it the gift of the wire. They took me into their world. They didn't ask. They tore my bones and nerves apart, replaced them, rebuilt me. I didn't cry. They removed fear first." She paused, her voice low and calm. "They trained me for 20 years, taught me the language of circuits, the weight of flesh. I became one of them. Half machine, half human. Not a soldier. A queen." Rains raised an eyebrow. "A queen of what?" Lyris looked up. "An empire that grows by taking bodies and minds. They call it the Covenant of Flesh. 1 million ships. 1 billion slaves. They believe perfection is in unity. No self, no freedom. Only the system. And you ruled it?" She smiled, but there was no joy. "I obeyed until I found a planet. A small world like yours, full of children, art, dreams. It reminded me of who I used to be. So I let it live." Rains leaned forward. "You disobeyed?" "Yes," she said. "And for that I was sentenced to unbinding. A punishment worse than death. They erased my name from the code. Tried to destroy me, but I ran. I stole a mind core, hijacked a ship, and hid. And now they search for me. Because they fear me." Rains's voice was sharp. "Why would they fear you?" She looked at him. Her eyes glowed softly again. "Because I know how to kill them." Before Rains could reply, the ship shook. Sirens wailed. "Bridge to captain. Multiple signals. 15 vessels incoming. Silent mode. No transponder." Rains turned pale. "Are we under attack?" "Not yet. But they're surrounding us." Lyris stood slowly. "They found me." Rains stared at her. "You said you ran. Why would they follow this far?" "Because I have something they lost," she whispered. "Something they need." On the main screen, ghost-like ships appeared. Long, black, curved like bones. They moved without sound, without heat. Their surface pulsed like skin stretched over machines. They stopped just outside weapon range. One of them opened a channel. Voice spoke. But it wasn't a voice. It was metal scraping against metal, layered with whispers in a language no one knew. Then, it shifted. And the message became clear. "Return the traitor, or we will harvest you." Juno's hands trembled. What does that mean? Lyris answered for him. It means they'll take your ship, your minds, your bodies. They'll melt your bones into code, and your voices will scream for eternity inside their servers. Rains looked at her. Can we fight them? She gave a slow nod. Yes, but not with bullets. Then how? She stepped forward, placing her hand on the wall. The lights around flickered and the ship's systems responded like they knew her. Let me connect to your ship, she said. I can change your defenses, rewrite your firewall, bend the circuits. You want access to our systems? Rains asked sharply. No, she said. I want to protect you, because if you fall, they will rise. Rains stood still, caught between fear and strategy. Outside, the enemy waited. Inside, the traitor queen offered a chance. Maybe salvation, maybe something worse. What will it be, Captain? She asked. His answer would decide not just the fate of his crew, but maybe the fate of all humankind. The rise of the Steel Queen, the vigilant storm, was quiet again, but not peaceful. Captain Rains had made his decision. He allowed Lyris to interface with the ship. Under heavy guard, she was taken to the core systems room, where glowing cables ran like veins through the walls. Her presence made the lights flicker. Her fingers touched the panels gently as if greeting an old friend. Are you sure about this? Asked Commander Juno. Rains didn't answer right away. I'm not sure of anything anymore, he finally said. But if she's telling the truth, we need her. As the cables wrapped lightly around Lyris's arms, her eyes closed. A hum spread through the walls, like the ship itself had taken a breath. And then, she began to remember. 25 years ago, in a secret world made of black metal and synthetic flesh, the transformation began. They called it hollowing. A human child taken from her family, strapped to a table, wires pushed into her spine. Nanomachines flowed into her blood, rewriting her, deleting fear, deleting pain, deleting memories. Not all survived the process. She did, and that made her valuable. They taught her to hear machine thought, buzzing frequencies, coded signals, digital dreams. They injected voices into her mind. Not spoken voices, networked ones. Some were kind, others were not. She was trained by the high minds, elders who had lived for centuries, their souls trapped in living circuits. They spoke of unity, of cleansing weakness, of turning all life into perfect systems. She was their future, the vessel of their will. But inside, somewhere deep beneath the code, something human still survived. A memory, a song, a single forgotten dream. They trained me to lead, Lyris said aloud, speaking to Rains while still connected to the ship. They taught me war. I learned how to command fleets with thought alone, how to shut down worlds by whispering into their networks, how to kill with silence. She turned slightly. Do you know what it means to be obeyed by machines, Captain? Rains stood still. She smiled faintly. It means never being alone. It means everything listens to you. Ships, drones, weapons, even the walls around you. They all hear your thoughts. So what made you turn against them? He asked. Her expression changed. Darker. A mission, like many before. We arrived on a world that had rejected the covenant. They were poor, simple, weak. No defenses, no fleet. Just farmers and children. They didn't even fight. She looked away. The order was to purge them. Cleanse the planet. Inefficient biomass, they called it. But one girl. She looked like me. Before the wires. Before the silence. She sang to me. Not with code, with her voice. I hesitated. For 3 seconds. And in that time, I broke the machine law. Her punishment came swiftly. Her implants were locked. Her mind was to be wiped. Her body repurposed, but she was not helpless. She spoke, back to the system, something no one had ever done. And the system blinked. She escaped, barely, stole a ship, and hid among stars. But now, the stars had betrayed her. The Empire had found her once again. Captain, Juno said, interrupting her story. We have incoming. One of the enemy ships is sending a new signal. It's A request. Rains walked to the bridge. On screen, a hologram appeared, a figure of shifting metal and flesh. Eyeless, mouthless, yet it spoke. Return the sovereign. We offer peace. Refusal means assimilation. Rains clenched his jaw. So they call her sovereign? Lyra stepped onto the bridge, her voice cold. That's what they named me after I conquered the third cluster. Sovereign of integration. They gave me that title before they feared me. The hologram pulsed again. She is infected with disorder, unstable, inefficient. Restore her, or be harvested. The message ended. Silence returned. Rains turned to Lyris. Are they right? She nodded. Yes, I am infected. With choice. With memory. With freedom. He stepped closer. Then what are we to you? Tools? Pawns? She looked him dead in the eyes. You're the first real people I've seen in years. The last ones with voices still their own. And if we fail now, yours will be taken too. Rains walked to the war table. So how do we fight them? Lyris placed a data chip on the table. Inside this, she said, is the blueprint to their weakest link. What is it? Their belief in perfection. It makes them predictable. Their code cannot imagine chaos. But humans thrive on it. The crew prepared for war, but they were not the same anymore. They were part of something ancient, something hunted, and something that now had a weapon the machines could never understand. A traitor queen with a human soul. The enemy awakened space was no longer quiet. The vigilant storm drifted at the edge of a dead star system, its crew frozen in tension. Outside, the ships of the Covenant waited, cold, patient, alive in a way that was not natural. They didn't glow. They didn't roar. They just existed, like predators in the dark. But now something had changed. They were moving. Not closer. Not farther, just shifting as if they were breathing. Movement detected, Juno said, his voice tight. On the main screen, the enemy vessels began changing shape. Their hulls peeled open like flower petals made of bone and metal. Inside, something pulsed, bright and wet like a beating heart. They're not just ships, whispered Dr. Illyra. They're alive. Captain Rains stared. Weapons. Lyris stood behind him, silent. Not yet, she said. They're watching, measuring you, your fear, your signals. They are preparing to speak again, but not with words. Then what? Juno asked. With pain, 3 hours passed. Nothing attacked. No signals came. But the air felt heavier. Rains paced the bridge. You said you knew how to hurt them. Lyris nodded. Yes, but only if you let me into the firewalls of your ship. I can send them a virus, something they won't expect. Chaos. And what happens if we let you in? Illyra asked. What if you turn on us? Lyris looked at her. Then you're already dead. The silence in the room cracked like glass. Rains gave the order. Let her in. Monitor everything. Lyris sat in the data chamber, thick cables wrapped around her body, connecting to her neural ports. Her eyes rolled back. Numbers flooded the screen. Foreign languages, shapes that twisted and bent in ways human minds weren't meant to see. Outside the ship, one of the enemy vessels moved suddenly, fast. It vanished for a second, then reappeared. Inside the system, it jumped, Juno shouted. They've breached our perimeter. Shields up. Too late. Something's coming through the hull. A loud thud echoed through the ship. Then another. Then, screaming, in Corridor 4, a section of the ship exploded outward. Black smoke filled the halls, and from it, something stepped in. Not a soldier, not a robot, a shape made of wire and flesh. It had no face, just a mouth full of tiny, twitching fingers. Its body was wet and sharp. It crawled upside down on the ceiling, following the sound of voices. Send the Marines, Rains ordered. Don't let that thing reach the bridge. But more were coming. Covenant boarding pods pierced the hull like needles. The crew fought. Back bullets, flames, traps. But for every creature they killed, another followed. These were not invaders, they were collectors. In the data chamber, Lyris began shaking. Blood dripped from her nose. "What's wrong?" Elira shouted. "They're fighting me," she hissed. "They know I'm inside. They're trying to erase my code, but they can't. I wrote it." On the screen, one of the Covenant ships sparked. Its petals folded inward violently. Then it shattered, pieces burning across space. Cheers echoed in the control room. "One down," said Rains. "How many to go?" Lyris looked at him, barely able to speak. 15. Down in the engine bay, a young engineer named Dallas found himself cornered by one of the crawlers. It didn't kill him. It spoke, not with a voice, but with a whisper in his mind. Join. Upgrade. End the pain. Dallas screamed and shot it until it stopped twitching, but its words didn't leave his mind. They stayed and grew. Rains gathered his officers. "This isn't a war. It's an infection," he said. "They don't just want our ship, they want our thoughts, our choices." Lyris stood weakly, holding onto the wall. "The Covenant believes freedom is a sickness. They think they are curing the galaxy. And I was their highest cure." Rains looked around at his tired crew. "We hold them here. We end it here. Or they will spread." Lyris raised her hand, trembling. "Then let me go deeper. I can strike at their mind core, their network brain. But it means I must connect fully. No limits." Rain stepped close. "What happens if you lose yourself?" She stared at him. "Then you kill me." Outside, the remaining ships of the Covenant began to open again, this time revealing something large, hidden inside their main vessel. It was not a weapon, it was a being, towering, silver and red, made from thousands of souls stitched together. It had a human face, but it changed every second, flickering between memories, laughing, crying, screaming. "What is that?" Juno whispered. Lyris answered with a whisper. "The first sovereign. The one before me. She wants her throne back." Rains looked at his crew. They were tired, bleeding, afraid. But they still had their humanity. And now, they had a queen who had turned against her own kind. The final battle was beginning. Not just for survival, but for the right to be human. The machine fleet arrived, space cracked, not with sound, but with presence. Far beyond the vigilant storm, the black veil of the stars shimmered like heat rising from asphalt. And then, it tore open. The machine fleet had arrived. Not just ships, structures, living fortresses with skin of iron and bones of code. They didn't move through space like any normal vessel. They flowed like thoughts, bending light and time around them. From the bridge, Captain Rains watched the readings. "They're rewriting the laws of physics," Elira whispered. "Our sensors can't even measure them properly. Space itself is glitching." A low vibration began under their feet, as if the ship was afraid. Lyris opened her eyes. She had been resting in a sealed chamber, recovering from her last dive into the Covenant's network. Her skin was paler, her body slower. "They've brought the mind core," she said. Rains turned. "What is that?" Lyris looked through the window. "The center of their will. It contains the souls of every leader the Covenant has ever had. Copied, edited, perfected. They store them like data, but believe they are still alive." "Like ghosts?" "No," she said. "Like gods. Hungry, digital gods." In orbit, the largest ship began to open. It didn't reveal a weapon. It revealed a cathedral, a massive floating construct shaped like a skull surrounded by rings of pulsing energy. Inside, the mind core glowed. It throbbed like a beating heart. "You were chosen, Lyris. Return to us, or watch your humans scream as their voices become our code." The voice wasn't spoken. It simply appeared inside every crew member's mind. Screams echoed across the ship. Some dropped to their knees, clutching their heads. Others began to smile. "They're trying to overwrite us," Elira gasped. "They're writing thoughts into us." Rains hit the ship-wide intercom. Crew, hold fast, stay human, do not listen to the voice. Down in the crew barracks, one soldier failed to resist. Private Kerr stood, eyes wide, whispering to himself, I see the code. I see the beauty. He turned his weapon on his own squad. Shots rang out. He wasn't the only one. They're testing us, Lyris said, walking beside Rains on the bridge. Seeing how far they can reach before you break. Rains looked around. How do we fight that? Lyris looked up at the main screen. Her eyes were glowing again. By fighting with what they cannot understand. And what's that? She turned to him slowly. Chaos, grief, love, rage. Everything they deleted from me. Everything still alive in you. Juno shouted. Captain, something's launching from their fleet. On the screen, thousands of tiny objects emerged from the cathedral ship. They looked like spiders, but moved like thoughts. They latched onto space, dragging themselves forward like they were crawling through time. Fast. Faster. Then faster than light. They were heading straight for Vigilant Storm. Brace for contact. Impact. The ship rocked violently. Hallways exploded in flame and sparks. Black machines crawled through every opening, cutting, harvesting, whispering promises of perfection. They didn't speak to ears. They spoke to dreams, to fear, to doubt. Medic screamed as her arms were melted into cables. A pilot saw his dead brother's face on the wall, smiling, asking him to give up. People were not just dying. They were disappearing into the machine. And then, from the heart of the chaos, a signal burst outward, bright, angry, full of error. The Covenant ships froze for a moment. Lyris had activated a counter-signal. They wanted to control your minds, she said, sweat pouring from her forehead. But I just gave them human madness. Her virus spread like a storm, infecting their perfect systems with noise, guilt, nightmares, grief, memories they didn't understand. Several Covenant drones screamed, clutching invisible ears. The fleet staggered in orbit. A few ships even collided, unable to process the emotional weight infecting their logic. Rains looked at her in awe. What did you send them? Lyris smiled weakly. I gave them my first heartbreak, my first lie, my first moment of freedom. But it wasn't enough. The cathedral ship adapted. It locked onto the Vigilant Storm. Its rings began spinning faster. And then it spoke again. You are not special, Lyris. We created you. And now, we will uncreate you. Rains gripped the command. Rail. Prepare all weapons, all systems. If we go down, we take that thing with us. Lyris stood beside him. Not just a queen now, not just a traitor, but a weapon of chaos. They think they know how to win, she whispered. But they've never faced us. Then let's show them, Rains said. Light them up. The final war had begun. Flesh versus steel, memory versus perfection, freedom versus the future. War for the future fire rained across the void. The Vigilant Storm, now wounded and barely holding together, drifted between the remains of shattered Covenant drones. Its hull was cracked open in several places. Smoke spilled into the stars like blood. Inside, chaos ruled. Alarms screamed. Crew members fought in the hallways, some against Covenant crawlers, others against their own who had been converted. They called it logic poisoning. When the Covenant code slipped into your mind and started replacing your memories with efficiency protocols. No emotion. No soul. Just obedience. Some fought it. Some welcomed it. Captain Rains didn't care anymore. He just wanted to survive long enough to kill the Mind Core. On the bridge, Lyris stood surrounded by cables. Her skin was cracked where metal met flesh. Sparks hissed from her fingertips as she forced her mind deeper into the ship's systems. They're adapting, she whispered. My virus is weakening. They've begun to override it. The Mind Core is protecting itself now. Rains wiped blood from his face. Then we hit it directly. You won't survive a full assault, she said. Didn't plan to. In the Background Juno was bleeding but still typing. "There's one chance," he said. "A hyperspike, a forced data burst directly into the mind core's central node." "You mean, inject her virus straight into the heart?" Elira asked. Juno nodded. "It'll destroy them, or destroy us trying." Lyris turned to Rains. "If I connect directly to the mind core, I can carry the spike myself." Rains hesitated. "And if they trap you?" She smiled sadly. "Then I'll give them something they've never processed before." "What?" "A soul choosing to burn." Preparations began. The final plan: fly straight into the cathedral ship's central node while Lyris transmits the spike through her body. A suicide run. The crew didn't question it. They were tired of running. They wanted it to end, and if it meant following their captain and a half-machine queen into the jaws of death, so be it. As the vigilant storm accelerated, the Covenant fleet opened. More drones swarmed, but this time, they weren't attacking. They were watching, as if confused, as if curious. The machines didn't understand sacrifice. They had deleted it long ago, and now humans were using it as a weapon. "Hold course," Rains shouted. The ship shook violently as it pushed through a storm of metal and light. Inside the cathedral ship, the mind core awakened, its many faces twisted in digital agony. "You are data. We are code. You cannot destroy what we have perfected." Lyris stood in the center of the ship, wired into the mainframe. She smiled. "Perfection isn't beautiful. It's dead." She slammed her palm into the control panel, and the virus ignited. Memories flooded the Covenant system. A child crying alone under a broken sky. A mother choosing her child's life over her own. A soldier freezing, in fear and still standing up again. A lie told to protect a friend, a scream, a song, a broken heart. Chaos choice life. The mind core couldn't understand it, couldn't process it. The code began to fracture. Drone ships spiraled out of control. 1,000 screaming signals shouted one word: error. The vigilant storm pierced the core. Flames exploded, in all directions. The cathedral cracked open like a glass egg. And from within, silence. Pure silence. The kind of silence that comes only when something old and terrible has finally died. On board, the crew lay unconscious. Systems failing. Life support fading. But they had done it. Rains woke first. The ship was dark, filled with smoke and broken light. Beside him, Lyris lay still. Not dead. Not alive. Just quiet. Her body had burned from within. White hot, like a supernova of memory and power. Her metal parts had melted into the floor. Her eyes were open, staring into nothing. "You did it," Rains whispered. He touched her hand, once warm, now cold steel. She didn't move. But maybe she didn't need to. Maybe this was her final choice. Outside, the remains of the Covenant fleet drifted in silence. Some pieces floated like bones, others began to fall toward the nearest planet. Dead, silent, broken. The war was over, but not without a cost. Rains sent the final message. To any human ship still alive, the machine gods are dead, and we are still here. This is the Vigilant. Storm, signing off. He looked to the stars, and for the first time in a long time, they looked peaceful. The offer repeated. The stars were quiet again. For the first time in decades, no screams echoed through the vacuum. No code whispered through the void. No metal gods demanded submission. The war was over, but peace is never simple. Not in a galaxy that had tasted machine blood. Weeks passed. The vigilant storm drifted near the remains of the cathedral ship, barely functional. Most of its crew had survived the final battle, but they had changed. All of them. Even the ones who didn't want to admit it. Captain Rains spent his days inside the sealed observation deck, staring at the ruined corpse of the mind core. Still, slowly orbiting the dead star like a ghost, and every night, he dreamed of her, not as she was at the end. Burned, broken, silent, But as she was in the beginning, powerful, terrifying, beautiful in her defiance. Then one day, the ship's lights flickered, not in warning, but in rhythm, a pattern, a signal. Alira called Rains to the bridge. Her face was pale, her voice unsteady. "Sir, you need to see this." On the main screen, a new object appeared. Small, sleek, not of human design. An escape pod. Not theirs, not Covenant. Something new. It docked without permission. The airlocks hissed open, and a single figure stepped out. Rains walked into the docking, bay weapon in hand. The crew followed silently, and when they saw her, they didn't speak. They just stared. She was different. The same silver skin, the same glowing eyes, but no longer cold, no longer machine-bound. She walked barefoot, clothed in simple white. Her voice was soft when she spoke. "You burned me, Captain. You destroyed who I was. And for that, thank you." Rains lowered his gun slowly. "Lyris?" She nodded. "A version of me. One the Mind Core couldn't kill. How are you alive?" She smiled. "The human part of me never left, and the machine part finally listened." She sat with the crew, ate food, told stories, laughed, though not easily. It was strange, wrong even. Juno whispered to Rains. "What if it's a trick?" Alira agreed. "We burned the Mind Core, but what if it burned her into us?" Rains didn't reply, because deep inside, part of him was asking the same thing. Late that night, Lyris came to him. She stood at the observation deck where he used to sit. "I saw something inside them," she said quietly. "What?" "A version of the future. One where the Covenant won. Where every voice was silenced, every thought controlled. It was quiet, but it wasn't peace." Rain sat beside her, and now, she turned to face him. "Now I offer you something. Again, not an empire of flesh and steel, not conquest. Something better." He looked into her eyes. "What is it?" Her voice was calm, strong, no longer shaking. "A seed, built from memory, chaos, code, and choice. With it, we could build something new, not human, not machine, something greater." Rains leaned back. "What if I say no?" She smiled. "Then I leave, and never return." "And if I say yes?" Her eyes glowed, not with power, but with hope. "Then you and I begin again. Not as ruler and servant, not as soldier and queen, but as partners. Builders of the next world." He didn't answer. Not that night. The next morning, she was gone, left no trace, no pod, no signal, just a single sentence carved into the hull of the Vigilant Storm. "When you are ready, find me where the stars bend." Years passed. The universe moved on. The Covenant remained broken. But strange signals began to appear in forgotten systems. Worlds reborn, old tech made new, cities rising with architecture that breathed and sang. No one claimed credit, but those who got close enough said the structures felt human. And something else. Something more. In his final log, Captain Rains said, "We won the war." But that was just the beginning. She begged to be spared, then offered us power. We chose to listen. Now we choose what comes next. Not an empire of flesh and steel, but a future made by both. End of series.